Good morning once again, and many thanks for staying with us right here on the #1 breakfast show in the country, Morning at NTV. My name is Romeo Busik, and of course we are coming to you live from the area or jurisdiction of Kasangati. This is where the retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye hails from. He is the full-time presidential candidate, and he's within our midst right here on Morning at NTV. We want to talk about a special purpose vehicle that he did launch in early October of this very year. We're talking about the People's Front for Transition. What is it going to be achieving in that regard? We shall also be talking about the Red Card Front agenda or campaign. Yes, what shall that be achieving in that regard? So the $64,000 question pertains to the fact that we've had similar campaigns that have taken center stage in the past, courtesy of the retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye. We are talking about campaigns like the Walk to Work protests in 2011. Yes, you did see that culminate after, heinous economic contestations that took center stage in 2011. Dr. Kizza Besigye took it upon himself to mount another campaign to put pressure on this government. That was in 2011, and we did know them as the Walk to Work protests. Fast forward, you did have another campaign in 2013. You did have another one in 2015. Yes, you did have another one in 2016 when he was saying, please, free your vote. You did have another campaign in 2017, Toji Kwata Ko. Then later on in 2018, you did have Tubale Mese. Many other campaigns have actually been birthed under Dr. Kizza Besigye, including the People's Government. So we would like to know, how sure are we that the People's Front for Transition is the special purpose vehicle that will actually unseat President Museveni in 2026 this time round? So let me introduce him, the retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye. He's joining us right now on set. Very good morning, Dr. Kizza Besigye.
A very good morning to you, Romeo, and welcome to NTV.
Indeed.
Back again here in Kasangati.
Indeed. We always have some very good time when we make our way right here to Kasangati.
And a very good morning to all the NTV viewers, wherever you are joining us from. I hope you had a good weekend, and sympathies to those who had challenges during the weekend. But here we are facing another week.
Here we are facing another week, and what better way to kickstart our week as Morning at NTV than to actually interact with the retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye. You did actually come up with a new special purpose vehicle that is in October, early October. It's called the People's Front for Transition. Now, as of Sunday, that is last week, you were in Kabale and you did launch the Red Card Front campaign. We would like to know what are the similarities or differences between these two campaigns. One is a pressure group and another is a campaign. But enlighten us on these two initiatives. What are they going to be achieving in this regard?
Well, first of all, the front. The front connotes some kind of a line in front. And really what it means is that we are facing a huge challenge, challenge of monumental proportions. And the front talks to people to rally together on the front line to confront the challenge that faces us. And so I hope that Ugandans, first of all, appreciate that there is a monumental crisis in the country. Now, obviously, this crisis does not affect everybody. Indeed, there are those who are beneficiaries of a crisis, who don't want even the crisis to end because it is what feeds them. But those who are impacted, affected, victims of this crisis, will know and will agree with me, because anybody who lives amongst people in Uganda knows the pain, the very deep pain that all Ugandans face. So this crisis, we call it actually a failure to thrive crisis. FTT, failure to thrive. This is actually a medical term, and maybe that's from my background.
Indeed, doctor.
Which affects themselves at our cost. But in doing so, they had to build roads to take away our wealth. They had to build bridges over which our wealth would be transported. They had to build the dams to process some of our products in order to take them. So you can't see that there is a dam that has been built for electricity, there is a road, and you think that that road is for the benefit of people. It could be for their detriment.
So the crisis we are dealing with
right now... So the crisis we are talking about is a human crisis.
And it's not precipitated by the COVID-19 pandemic alone?
No, no, no. It was there. It was raving. It has only been greatly accentuated. You see, at independence, the independence leaders identified that there were three main challenges for the population: poverty, ignorance, and disease. Have those gone away?
No.
Poverty is much worse. At independence, people could, feed their homes. There was no hunger in the country. Nobody suffered hunger. It was not a crisis at independence. It is a crisis today. There was no unemployment at independence. It is a huge crisis today. So the challenges that were there at independence of poverty have intensified. The challenges that were there of disease have intensified for people, you know. I this last week visited a colleague of mine who was bitten by the LDUs that they met them outside in curfew time, and badly injured. I went to visit that person who was in a private health facility, and I said, if this can be a private health facility, for God's sake, that facility should not really be allowed to function at all. It's completely, its condition cannot be a condition where people can recover, But that was a private health facility where they went because they have no real options. So this is the crisis we are talking about, a crisis where kids are not in school, in spite of Uganda being a country that is far, far behind in terms of knowledge, the knowledge content in our country. Our gap and other countries is very huge. In spite of that, Uganda is now the only country in the world whose kids are at home.
Indeed.
All other countries on the globe who were all affected by the pandemic, who have even suffered far more greatly due to the pandemic than Uganda, their children went back to school a long time ago. Why? Because knowledge is survival. Knowledge is life. No country survives without knowledge. It is taken over by those with knowledge. That's how we were colonized. We had enough knowledge. We are pushing ourselves even further. And this is deliberate. So the crisis...
You think it is deliberate?
So the crisis that affects Ugandans is one that must be confronted urgently.
Dr. Kizabesi, you just did mention that it is a deliberate move to close schools, yet the president has come out one too many times to say that it was a health issue. He wanted to protect the children.
Yes,
he would rather have them at home than dead in their coffins.
What I'm telling you is that the whole question of schools and their opening has been a subject of world. There are 200, I think, and about 20 countries in the world. All of them have their children in schools.
222. Go ahead.
Except Uganda. Is Uganda is coronavirus only in Uganda? Or the world, the United Nations, UNICEF, UNDP and all these other UN bodies have all made a joint statement calling on all countries to open schools. And this is because they have studied the dynamic of the pandemic and know that, yes, even before vaccination, kids can go back to school. So, but this, so the question is, why the front? The front comes because, first of all, there is this huge crisis.
All right.
A crisis that comes out of a political crisis. The political crisis is that where these people who are confronted by this crisis have no say. Mm-hmm. They are captive. And you see, like I told you, this comes way back from the time Uganda was captured by foreigners. In fact, when Uganda was under foreign domination, we were better off. Why? Because under the British rule, they were exploiting us, they were exploiting all Ugandans equally, and they were serving all Ugandans equally. So we were suffering, if you like, equally. Today, when there is domination and exploitation by Ugandans, there are Ugandans who are well off and who are, taking away from other Ugandans. So, in other words, we live in a Uganda where you find that your neighbor is the one robbing from you, is well off, building all kinds of things and, terrorizing you so that you keep quiet as he does so. So under the current crisis, we have segregation of Ugandans by Ugandans. So while the kids of most Ugandans are not in school, some are in school and continuing life as usual.
Indeed.
So this is a political situation where Ugandans are held captive by other Ugandans.
But indeed, we cannot equate the situation now to back in the day when slavery was taking center stage, when we did have white people selling black people onto the market to just go and do free work. That is not taking center stage right now, as we speak.
Actually, there is
and you also did mention the fact that there is education. Others have their children at home, others have their children in school. But back in the day, you were not allowed to take your children in a certain school if you are not of a certain color. So largely, we cannot compare the situation now and back then, Dr. Kizabesi. Things have actually improved.
It is actually exactly the same.
How so?
Whereas you could be stopped taking your child to a school which is for whites, for example.
Indeed.
Even today, your child will not go to the same school where the child of General Kainerugaba will go.
And that would be precipitated by poverty, not because Kainerugaba doesn't want me to go there.
Absolutely. So it is segregation, whether you like it or not, because the money that the other one is using to take their children to school is your money. So they take your money and your money educates the other kids at your own cost. But so let me, the first thing is there is a crisis.
Indeed.
The second thing to appreciate, the crisis is caused by capture of our state by armed people who use force to keep us without rights, to keep us exploiting our resources. Now, the question is, how do these people who captured Uganda, who hold it by force, how does this problem go away? That is the question. That is the question that the front seeks to answer. We have a crisis. The crisis is caused by captivity of the people in crisis by a few people using the force of guns. That is how we describe the problem.
And of course, that's why you went to the bush in 1980.
Yes. So that
we could move away from gun rule all the way to civilian rule.
How we describe the problem. The problem is described differently by those, of course, who captured us. So the first thing that the front seeks to gain is understanding of the people of Uganda, what the problem is. That the problem is that your wealth is taken away by this person, used for their benefit, not for your benefit. And so your situation gets worse as their situation gets better. And you have no say. There is nothing you can do. So if this is the problem, how do we resolve it?
Indeed.
How do we get the gunmen who are holding us by our throats to release us? And there has been a debate around that. In the previous times, there was a view that we could do so through an election.
Yes.
An election organized by the gunmen. And we have, demonstrated through practice that that is not going to happen. So the people who are in the front or who are calling a rallying call for different approach
Yes.
are those who believe that the crisis of state capture is not going to go away through an electoral process by itself. That you throw a piece of paper in a box, they count it and say now the gunmen can go away. That we believe is not going to happen.
What will work?
So what then follows if the electoral process, which is of course a process provided for under the Constitution, is not going to work because the Constitution is not allowed to function, then Article 3 of the Constitution creates a duty, not just a right, but a duty for every Ugandan to do everything in their power
All right.
to ensure that Article 1 functions. Article 1 of the Constitution says all power belongs to the people.
Indeed.
That's the power that has been grabbed by the gunmen. In order for that power to be returned to the people, Article 3 calls on all Ugandans to do everything in their power to ensure that Article 1 functions. Now, so the front is the rallying call for Ugandans to come, and we do everything in our power to make sure that the country returns to our control. That is why the front. So the front means an invitation to all Ugandans in their entire formations. If you are a political party, you come as a political party. If you are a civil society organization, you come as a civil society organization. If you are an individual that does not belong to anything, you come as an individual. We all unite to confront the problem.
I'll take it back to 2011, the walk-to-work protests.
Yeah,
that was one of the campaigns.
Maybe before we get there, so the front has, first of all, to break the capture, to end the capture.
Indeed.
In other words, to defeat the gunmen so that the gunmen surrender to the people and the people take charge.
So the viewer who is watching Morning at NTV right now is just wondering. This is not the first time we've had such talking points or campaigns coming through. 2011, 2013, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2019, and here we are talking about the People's Front for Transition.
I'm coming to that, but let me first finish the front for transition.
Right.
So, first of all, I have been explaining the front. Why the front? Why should we all rally together?
Indeed.
It is to free ourselves.
All right.
And we can talk a little more also about how that freedom
Will come
from
about.
gunmen, once we come together, will happen. Because the first thing is to come together, take actions that free us from the control of gunmen.
Indeed.
But once we have freed ourselves, how then do we organize ourselves to make sure that we are not recaptured in any way at all? Because we have had false starts You think you have liberated yourself, tomorrow you are back in captivity. So what we call a transition is a period from the time the NRM gunmen get out of power to a point where Ugandans have reorganized the control of power so that there is democratic control of power and we can have free and fair elections.
After
for
4
the
years.
very first time in the history
That is after 4 years.
of our
48
country.
months.
Yeah, so that we are proposing to be 4 years. These are all proposals to all Ugandans. But so there are three things. One, dealing with the crisis.
But why did you choose 4 years? Because I'm looking at other countries where they've suffered coups or subverts. They've called for 6 months or even a year against the mediators who say it should be within 6 months.
For all these processes, we have made publications to give information. First of all, how shall we end the gun rule? There is, we have published a pamphlet or a booklet to show how that happens. Two, once it happens, then the transition, we have published something called the transition agenda. The transition agenda talks about the activities that need to be undertaken to reorganize the power of the power in Uganda democratically. And so those activities have now, again, departing from what has happened before. Because when the Idi Amin government fell under attack from Tanzania, there was, Ugandans did not know what would follow and how the power would get back to them. And that's how eventually it didn't get back to them. When NRM took power in 1986, there was the 10-point program, but there was no transition agenda to know that in the first month, this is what would happen. In the first year, this is what will happen. In the second, so that people can keep tracking to see whether what is supposed to be done is what is being done until the transition ends. So the transition agenda, we have prescribed what will happen from day one to the last day. The activities that need to be done.
So you've had followers of the FDC.
At the last day of the transition agenda, the front ends.
That's when
in other words, the front is not a permanent feature.
Yes.
The front is only a temporary feature of rallying Ugandans to free themselves, reorganizing Uganda into a democratic society, and it ends there. That's why the front is not a political party. The front is not, for elections. So we shall not take the front to campaign. No. The front is to liberate ourselves, free ourselves, reorganize the country, and then the normal democratic processes continue.
Dr. Kizza,
so now you were asking, how different is it
from the previous campaigns? 4GC 2011.
It is different in two respects. First is that some of the previous campaigns were campaigns geared towards the elections.
I see.
Where we are saying, let's meet, let's unite, let's organize ourselves, and we defeat these people in an election. Now that one, as I have said, is no longer at all an idea in the front. It's not an idea in the front because the front
is no longer focusing on elections.
Is advised by the understanding that elections in and of themselves will not liberate us. So this is actually, as I have pointed out, a formation out of Article 3, when the Constitution can no longer function as required, when it has been trampled as our Constitution has been, when there is no rule of law, Because if there is no rule of law, you can't even say, let's now amend this so that it reads like this. Because regardless of how it reads, nobody is observing it. So when you are in that situation where there is no rule of law, where there is no constitutionalism, then the struggle is different from what we were trying to do, to cause change through elections. So that's the first difference. Secondly, is that in this struggle,
yes,
which is very similar to the struggle of walk to work, because some of us actually came to the conclusion that elections won't cause change in 2011. And that's how we started a struggle of a different nature.
And that's why so many of your supporters and others who are not aligned with the FDC or any political party within this country are asking themselves, how will you dislodge Museveni if you're not focusing on elections? The question is in the how.
Was walk to work, for example, a threat to the state?
You are simply...
Because it was not an election, but was it a threat? Was it a greater threat even than
You
elections?
are simply highlighting the social inequalities at the time.
Was it a greater threat than elections?
Of course it was.
Because don't forget, nobody in the walk to work campaign ever carried a stick or anything violent.
They were never violent, but some of your supporters are just leaving jail in 2021.
Yes.
So those are some of the questions that we are asking ourselves. How will people join this campaign knowing the end result will be jail, ending in jail without even seeing a day in court, just like some of the individuals who followed you in 2011 and are just being released right now?
You see, there is no getting to a better place.
I see, sacrifices.
Without passing through a difficult place. The route to a good place is through a difficult place. Whichever route it is.
The story of my life, I hear you.
Absolutely. Whether it's from poverty to richness, whether it is from lack of education to education, you must go through some effort. That effort will include living in a life that you would not, you would rather not have lived, you know. If you are studying, sometimes you have to forego your sleep and you read throughout the night. So if you want to sleep, you can't have it both ways. The same thing, if we are in captivity, how many people, because of the conditions in which Ugandans are, how many, do you know that 465, according to government records,
yes, doctor,
465 children below 5 years die every day.
Indeed.
From preventable causes.
6 million this year.
465 per day.
6 million overall.
Yes.
This year.
Die. So, are those dying in walk to work?
No.
But they are dying because of the capture. So, the few who may suffer in jail or even dying in the process of getting freedom are paying a price to save all these people who are dying, who are actually dying, women who are dying, the records.
Dr. Kizabes, how many are still willing to pay that price when I'm languishing in bail? I've been denied, I'm languishing in jail. I've been denied bail for over 10 years. But the leader with whom we are following, Dr. Kizabes, is out on the streets. He was lucky to get some kind of bail because he's a huge figure, political figure.
Yes, you see, you are not...
And somehow he cannot be kept incommunicado. But some of your foot soldiers are still in jail, and that is the biggest fear right now.
This is a narrative that must really be clear to everybody, that it's a narrative of those who want to keep us captive.
I see.
Besigye has no people. I don't own anybody. I don't have anybody under my control and determination of how they live.
Yeah.
I come into this struggle as Besigye. You come into this struggle as Ronnie.
Indeed.
Both of us fighting for our survival. So everybody who comes to the front that should never come to the front because of Besigye. Absolutely not. This is not. This has nothing to do with me. I'm also coming to the front to make my humble sacrifice so that our country can be a country of freedom. Now, if I am not arrested and you are arrested, you cannot say, since Besigye has not been arrested, why should I be arrested? You are arrested because of your views of wanting freedom. The one arresting you does not want you to have freedom. Let me tell you, I don't know how many times exactly I have been arrested myself.
So many times.
I don't know how many times I have lived under tear gas, under, you
had to sign your nomination papers behind jail.
Yes, yes.
Terrible times.
Now, it's not because it's just me seeking freedom. I don't know how many times you have been detained and treated like that.
One too many times. Beyond 48 hours.
But when that freedom comes,
Indeed.
you will enjoy it as much as I would enjoy it. So the critical thing that we all must focus on, but partly that's why, even I continue this struggle, because when we were in the bush in the 1980s,
Yes, Doctor.
we all believed that we were fighting so that Ugandans would be free. People paid their lives. All those dead scars, the scars you see piled all over, many died in the belief that they were fighting for freedom.
More than 500,000.
Yes. Now, that has not even been. In other words, they died for nothing.
I see.
So that is the more critical thing to look at, that we should not be in a struggle that does not deliver what we are struggling for, which is why we want this clarity. Because even when we go into elections, elections can, even if the elections cause the change, look at the elections that we have been having. Members of parliament promising, we are going to do this, we are going to do this, they elect them. Then people say, but where are the things you said you were going to do? Nothing.
Because of commercialization of politics, they have to first recoup their money.
And they have nothing to do
Indeed.
about these lies, these politicians who have told them lies. So this process, beyond causing change, what the real fundamental element in it is empowerment of people.
I see.
To cause those who are supposed to serve them to be under them and to do their will.
Of course, Morning at NTV understands that the People's Front for Transition and the Red Card Front agenda are also geared towards the Plan B. These are all build-ups to the Plan B. But then the question is, how are you going to be transitioning to ensure that we remove President Museveni without elections? How?
So 3 things.
Yes.
It starts with people getting it, that Museveni and his armed men who captured the country must be removed. They must first get it.
Wasn't this message drummed in 2011,
Yes,
moving forward
yes.
up to now,
Yes, and
2021?
there are many people, even up to now, who haven't got it because there is a huge effort for them not to get it.
Okay.
That's why, you see, why do you think the regime stops us from talking on radios, holding public meetings?
Yes, Robert Chagulanyi was stopped like twice or 3 times
Yes, I have
over the
been
week.
stopped from radios countless times.
Indeed.
Across the country, I have been stopped. I've been pulled out violently from radio. The reason that happens
Go ahead.
is the same reason they cannot allow us to hold public meetings where many people can come and you deliver this message. That is so that they should not get it that they are captives. Because many people who are captives quite often don't appreciate their captivity, but even though when they do, they think it is their fate. There is nothing they can do about it. They are resigned. They are resigned to it. So the regime which holds people captive will do everything they can to make sure that people are not, mobilized into knowing that they can do something about their captivity and that they can change it. So that's why, one, they refuse engagements.
I see.
Secondly, they bombard the people with propaganda, suggesting that, no, they will be okay, they are going to be fine. Bonaba Gagawale, you'll all become rich.
Middle income.
Yes, they say, open, I don't know, wealth creation is coming. You are going to be, now they are talking about the parish model. The money is coming to the parish model. You are going to be all right. So Bonaba Some, people are going to, all your children are going to have education. When they know that there is no education that the children are going to get. So on the one hand, they block information that would liberate and empower people to take action. On the other hand, they bombard them with propaganda to keep them where they are. They also do one of the things that is, even up to now, the biggest source of denial of our people's freedom: divide the captives, and foment conflicts amongst the captives,
just
so
like
that captives are fighting each other,
divide and rule,
rather than focusing on the person who is captivating them. So that is the why, first of all, the first step to liberation is understanding this, how they have captivated you and kept you captive.
Indeed.
Secondly, once you understand that, it is to come to the conclusion that I must do something. So our rallying call is for every Ugandan who gets it to be ready to do something.
It seems like Ugandans get it, but not the political parties, especially those allied to the opposition. National Unity Platform Party, DP, the Democratic Party, and some of these other political parties that refuse to join the People's Front for Transition. You did have the leaders of the Democratic Party who said they are disowning the members, like Michael Summerwater, yes, Mukaku, who actually moved all the way and joined the People's Front for Transition. They said we do not actually recognize those individuals anymore. NUP is saying they're not going to be joining, but they can discuss with you as the People's Front for Transition. So largely, how are you going to mobilize all Ugandans to come behind the People's Front for Transition if the few opposition leaders are not behind you?
First of all, even before we talk about joining or not joining, is what is before us. If everybody agrees, at least, that there is this crisis, if everybody agrees that we are in captivity of gunmen, then what I would rather have them say is how those who don't think we should unite in a front think we should get out of captivity. That is the debate we should have. So you don't want us to unite to fight the captivity. Tell us how you want us to do it. And we don't even have to all unite in one group. But we all must confront the captivity.
So you'll be attacking the president, who is the foe right here, with a disunited front?
No.
We are attacking him as NUP, as
yes,
DP,
you can even
as
attack
PFT.
you can even attack as different fronts, provided you are clear what you are doing. Because the reason now, my concern is not that we are disunited. My concern is that rather than attacking the problem, we attack each other. Now that is that is where the madness really lies.
Indeed. Let's interrogate that.
You are all captive, but rather than focusing on the problem, you are focusing on each other.
And you feel it's the NRM government fomenting all this confusion among the opposition loyalists?
Well, but partly, I said two things. One, certainly, the NRM will be working over time to make sure that we keep on divided and conflicting. But also, I told you that there are those who don't get it, and that we must change.
Can we agree that they are mainly within the opposition political parties? Because Ugandans seem to get it, but then there's no leadership to help them move towards that direction that you want. There's no special purpose vehicle, Dr. Kizza Besigye. There's a disunited front. You do have even some of your supporters who are now wondering, how shall we achieve transition using the People's Front for transition when other campaigns similarly have failed? These are supporters who were once with the FDC and have now morphed into the NUP stronghold.
You see, again, you know, if you are activists and you haven't achieved your objective,
Indeed.
why would you say you have failed? You
see.
simply haven't achieved what you are trying to do. You only fail when you stop trying.
I agree.
That's the only time you fail. But if we are still fighting, and you know, any war, even the war that brought Mr. Museveni to power, he says, you know, Mr. Museveni is like, he's a very interesting person. He's like what they say to God, that in the beginning there was the word. So in the beginning there was Museveni, and Museveni was with NRM, and NRM and Museveni was NRM. You know, because he says NRM started in 1965 with a student. That's what he says. NRM started in 1965 with a student movement.
All right.
Up to now.
Yes, Doctor.
Now, you see, if, like Mr. Museveni describes his NRM to have started with him, it took from 1965 to 1986 to actually get power. That was 30-something years. So a struggle takes time, takes phases, takes many campaigns. The struggle does not end just because we have started one campaign and the struggle.
Okay, you did mention that it did take too much time for President Museveni to win the presidency.
Yes.
So you do have members of opposition who are actually saying that you, as Dr. Kizza Besigye, you are also targeting the presidency. And that's why you're coming up with this special purpose.
Absolutely not. So in the struggle, what one must focus on is, first of all, you must have a plan.
All right.
What it is you want to achieve. As I have told you, one of the things is to achieve awakening. So you must monitor, is the awakening being achieved?
Indeed.
From what you've just said, it seems the awakening, you said Ugandans get it.
It's already here, they just don't have the leadership.
So these Ugandans who get it did not get it without an effort. So in other words, all these years, when people are saying we have failed, we have achieved the awakening of people. Secondly, what is needed to end this is to have the organizational capacity to unite a critical mass of people who get it.
How will that be achieved when opposition members are saying you just came up with this PFT so that you can become president?
Yes.
And also they say they cannot join because you are political failures. The group is made up of political failures, 85% who lost in the just concluded election. People like Walter, Sulaiman Chidanda,
as I told you, there will be a lot of narratives of those who don't want us to succeed.
I see.
And those narratives, we know who they benefit. As I have explained, this has absolutely nothing to do with me. If you believe that we are captive, it's not only me who is captive. If you believe we should free ourselves, it's not only me who should free himself, or even who should free you.
Indeed.
Everybody must
concerted effort.
Must act. So the second thing, as I was pointing out, is if we have to defeat this, first is to get it. Secondly, is to have organizational competencies that rally a critical mass, not everybody, but a critical mass of Ugandans to confront it. And that's what the front is trying to do. Rally a critical mass of Ugandans to confront it, not of leaders. Leaders, as we have been saying, leaders may even be influenced by other things, by their own ambitions. Leaders may be influenced by the opposition you are fighting with.
So this is not a ruse to counter the National Unity Platform and Robert Kyagulanyi. You're telling us clearly this is not a ruse to counter Robert Kyagulanyi and the National Unity Platform Party.
How
like
can
people on the other side are contending?
Robert Kyagulanyi has absolutely no power in this country. Nothing, no power.
Bobby Wine has no power in this country.
No, where is it? I have no power. We are all seeking to get power for Ugandans. No Ugandan. We are all captive.
You have leaders who are saying since you had failed four times, we should give Robert Kyagulanyi a chance.
We are all captive. The people we should confront are those who took our power.
Indeed.
Not confront each other. Once the power is back to Ugandans, Ugandans will then decide.
But this is what People Power did when they did actually start that movement. They said, FDC, come and join these forces. But you refused. As Kizza Besigye, the FDC refused to join.
You see, the People Power movement, and this is indeed one of the things I've been endeavoring to tell you, we are rallying people for an election.
I see.
Let's all register, let's go and vote.
Makes no sense.
I had an intense discussion with them on the strategy. What is the strategy? Said, no. We are all going to, if we have enough people, our people will come and vote and it will be over. You remember even, words which were...
I do.
Uncharitable that were coming my way.
I do.
This was because these messages, they are all Bushmen. They know each other. They are the problem.
Kind of putting this public aside.
Some people indeed believe that it's possible to win an election if it is not Besigye.
I see.
Because Besigye and Museveni are all Bushmen. They are the same. They all come from there. So if there is something else, we shall get there. So that, if you want my honest approach, was a wrong approach.
What will it take to unite all the opposition forces so that you work as a united front to dislodge Museveni?
I told you that since 2011,
all right, walk to work.
Our approach was to struggle outside the elections.
Indeed.
In fact, our leader in 2011 was the Honorable Matthias Mpuga, the leader of opposition. It was not me. He was our coordinator for the Walk to Work campaign. In other words, we already got it, that this was not a partisan thing, that it will be FDC or it will be...
I'm afraid we are running out of time, Doctor. But what will it take to unite these forces to dislodge President Museveni? Or are you willing to move alone?
You see, the people that need to be united, first and foremost, are the oppressed Ugandans.
The foot soldiers.
Yes,
right.
Yes, not leaders. Once the Ugandans get it and know what it takes to get rid of Museveni, they will do what it takes.
And like I contended they do, it's only the opposition that
they will do what it takes to free themselves. Who led the change in Sudan? They were ordinary women. It doesn't have to be Besigye or Kyagulanyi or anybody. Ordinary Ugandans who are bearing the greatest pain.
But do you agree if we are to achieve this change, opposition has to clean house?
You see, cleaning house is desirable, but not absolutely necessary. If the houses cannot be cleaned, they rot there. Other houses will come up. They don't have to. There are no limited number of houses. This is why, people will organize differently. provided we remain focused on the objective. The objective is to get out of captivity of gunmen. Ugandans have never chosen their leaders since independence. The leaders are brought by guns. That's what must end. So let's have a conversation. Like you're asking me, I would want you to ask every other person in the opposition how they think this will end. Because, and if we think the same, why then shouldn't we get on with the job? Why should we just keep on poking at each other, wasting time of Ugandans who want freedom tomorrow?
Indeed.
So for us, in the People's Front for Transition, that's why we say
red card.
Red card. This is symbolic. What it is intended to mean is that for anybody who stands on the way of people's freedom, anybody at all.
But do you agree this is going to be a very big challenge for you to achieve if Ugandans are not behind you, especially if opposition political parties are not willing to fight with you?
You see, opposition political parties are not Ugandans.
Indeed.
Absolutely not. Ugandans are the people who are suffering, whose businesses have been destroyed. Those businessmen in town, businesses have been destroyed. They are coming out of lockdowns. They are imposing heavy taxes on them. The border-borders who are being terrorized all over the country with border-borders at every polling station, the market vendors. These are the real Ugandans.
Of course, you're not calling these Ugandans to come for dialogue. You're calling them to come and rise up against this regime and dislodge it. Let's let it categorically clear, Dr. Besigye. What exactly are you calling for?
I told you the 3 steps. The first step, do we all get it? That is the step of engagement, which is what we have been doing all these years. And I'm glad you gave me a feedback that Ugandans get it.
Indeed.
So once they get it, the second stage is let's organize ourselves for the job. And that's what we are focusing on now. Let's organize ourselves for the job. Once we have a critical mass...
What kind of job, Dr. Kizabes?
Of freeing ourselves, of fighting for our freedom. And you see, and
how do you free yourself if you're in shackles?
Oh, breaking them. That's what it takes. And that's what we are up to. So the question is, how do we break them? And this is how, so we all must know that we have these shackles. We all must know that somebody put these shackles on us and that we must unite, maybe break one shackle first, and this one helps the other one.
I see.
And that we have to cooperate to free ourselves. And that's what we are doing. And we need a critical mass of Ugandans. Of Ugandans. So, it's like even when the war that brought Mr. Museveni to power, there were many people who were fighting and they never united. The West Nile Bank Front of the UNRF2, there was FEDEMO, UFM, I don't know. There were many groups that were fighting. But Ugandans can and have the ability to focus on their interest, see of all the fighting groups who is projecting their interest.
I see.
And they will rally and get their interest. And this is why it's been critical. The critical first step in what we are doing,
yes, Doctor,
is to define the process all the way up to the point of freedom. So that anybody who rallies does not rally blindly, does not rally without clear roadmap. We've set the roadmap. This is the roadmap. If somebody thinks there is a better roadmap, please, that's the conversation we should be having. Show us your roadmap so that we see which roadmap takes us to where we
now
want
you
to
do
go.
have a conversation on removal of bail. Don't you think your supporters will be fearful to join this campaign, knowing very, very well that if I get arrested, I could actually wallow in jail for over 180 days before being released? And do you think this is a conversation that is being brought up to actually counter such campaigns ahead of 2026?
Of course.
In the next 2 minutes, please wrap up.
Of course, the people who are holding us captive
Indeed.
will do everything in their power to keep us captive by terrorizing us so that we keep fearful. They hold us down with fear. They will continue to impoverish us so that we have no capacity to struggle.
Indeed.
They will continue to deny us the opportunity to talk to Ugandans, to get our messages
And
through.
finally,
they will continue dividing us. But all countries passed through these kinds of challenges. This is not the first country that is going through these challenges, even including our neighbors here in Kenya. They went through these phases. We have to overcome them. The kind of crisis that is in our country today, which I have said is a failure to survive crisis, FTT.
Failure to survive crisis. Thank you very much.
The failure to thrive crisis
very
is
insightful
so
conversation.
Urgent, is so urgent that we confront, that we should have absolutely no other priority but to free ourselves from this, so that our kids can again build knowledge in this country.
The failure to thrive crisis, retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye, thank you very much for your time. Next time we shall actually accord you more time so that we exhaust more other pertinent issues that are actually plaguing this country. Issues to do with bail, issues to do with human rights violations, poverty, education, and so forth. Very insightful conversation. Thank you, viewers, for having joined us right here on Morning at NTV. My name is Romeo Busik, and of course, Stephen Mbide is joining us with a conversation shortly after this break. We'll be